Well, I'm a pianist, born in New York, raised in New Jersey. I went to Eastman for my bachelor's degree and my doctorate degree, and I went to Juilliard for my master's degree. I currently live in Chicago, and I teach at the Music Institute of Chicago, where I also direct the chamber music program, and I also teach at Illinois State University, and I organize occasionally, much less regularly now that I've become a little bit more busy. I organize my own recitals, either solo recitals or collaborative recitals, depending on
Awesome.
what the case is, right? So yeah.
Awesome. Very good. Yeah. So, yeah, I was impressed by your piano playing
Oh, thanks very much.
when I looked at that, and just a very expressive, sensitive, aesthetic, which I liked.
Oh, go
So,
on.
I know. So anyway,
I don't take compliments very well, so I.
it's all right. Yeah, it can be like, you work for so long and right? It's like, yeah. But I think that from an outsider's perspective, yeah, like that's the way I perceive your music and it's great. And
Oh, thanks very much. I really appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah. So anyway, very good, very good. So perfect. Um, so let's talk about composers, Daniel.
Sure.
So, does your artistic vision always line up with the new music composers that you work with? If you do it all, or any new music?
Oh, sorry. Go on. Yeah.
Yeah. So does your artistic vision line up? Does it? So when you're playing a piece of new music, how how is your artistic vision? Like, what are you thinking? This is the question specifically for you. I felt like would work really well. How does it? Um, so what you're seeing, your big picture line up with what the composer's big picture is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so I think I tend to think of it a little bit more as a dialogue, especially when I have an opportunity to work with the composer kind of one on one with something.
Yeah.
Um, and so I tend to come in, I've done the analysis, I've done the practicing, if it's a collaborative piece, I've, worked with my partner on on what our ideas are on the piece. But I
Mhm.
think there's an inherent flexibility that I bring into it. Um, and most of the time, I find composers are interested in my reading, right? Whether it's
Mhm.
what Taruskin would call a misreading, or whether it's the exact right reading that they would have wanted. And so for those reasons, I mean, so in terms of artistic vision, I think my artistic vision is more, it's less of a grand thing and more of a what makes this piece work for me as the performer. What ideas do I want to communicate to it?
Mhm.
And those ideas are much more fluid in my conception of it than like this is what this piece is about, and the composer will agree with me or disagree with me.
Yes.
Um, there's a lot of, I think, pianism that is about what makes an effective performance, and sometimes I think just the work and the technique and ideas of a piece of music. If you're doing that sort of practicing, there are a lot of different ways of reading a piece that are all really compelling. And we know this from like when you think about a Beethoven sonata. It's like there are a lot of ways of reading a Beethoven sonata, right? There are a lot of ways of reading a Bach partita or a toccata or these pieces that are massive works in the classical canon. And the most important thing I think I can be when I'm working with a composer is curious about what their music is, and curious about what they're thinking, and curious about what I'm thinking, and curious again if it's for piano and something else, curious about with my partner about what my partner is thinking and feeling.
Mhm.
And that so it's more of a curiosity, I think, and it's an exciting one because the composer is alive and in the room, and we get to talk about ideas. And if I do something really wrong and they go, yeah, that's not at all what I meant, then it's really nice to be told that. I
Yeah.
tell my students a lot sometimes when they get nervous about like, oh well, I'm playing this Beethoven sonata. It has to be perfect. And I always say, like, Beethoven's dead. You don't need to worry so much about that. He's not coming back, right? Just read the text and try to understand what's there. So curiosity, I think, is much more important to me than having like a preconceived artistic vision of a piece that has to be kind of consistent. Um,
I like that. Yeah. So this this adds to the question. Well, this begs the question, I should say. What makes you curious?
well, you mean musically or just generally?
Musically, yes, musically.
I mean, when I am interested and moved by a piece of music or excited by something, or when I'm reading through a piece or just kind of looking at a score, there are a lot of different things. I think that that sensation of being moved by something is a miraculous one and one that always requires investigation. Um, and there are a lot of different ways of being moved, and there are a lot of different ways of having something meaningful happen to you. And then thinking about how to reproduce that on a concert stage or in a performance or in a room or for one other person, that is also an interesting, a different type of curiosity. Um, so it's a little hard to answer because I mean I'm working on some Chopin etudes now and some Rachmaninoff etudes. I got married in August, so I haven't been practicing quite as much as I normally do. Unsurprisingly, and my left hand has suffered, so I've been picking things out that will really make. And part of the curiosity is like, well, what worked when I was younger, and what didn't work now, or what's not working now, and let me really think about how ways of practicing it and about how that will impact the technique I choose. How will that impact the sound that I create? Um, so so yeah, there are a lot of different things that can add to that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that as I've been doing these interviews, I've come to discover that the best sort of composer performer collaborations are ones that add to a common bigger goal, and one that will create something that's fantastic. And I found that as a composer myself, if the performer is so gung-ho about it and they're so enthusiastic about it, it just makes such a big difference and what we produce, and the excellence just goes through the roof. But yeah, very
And
good.
I'm sure as a composer, you've had the experience where you've written something with something in mind, and the performer does something you don't expect, and that's like also really like, oh, what's going on here? Like this is what in the text made this performer think that way or act in this particular manner or make this choice. And that's like a really cool thing because it means that I mean there's a lot there to find, right? So it is really I'm not a composer, or rather I don't share anything that I do compose, and I can neither confirm nor deny that I engage in compositional activities from time to time. But you know the excitement of working with someone, I think, is yeah, performer composer, it's a two-way street, I would imagine, at least.
Yes,
um,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, indeed. So anyway, yeah, I think it's a natural thing to do if you're a pianist to start writing music because, like you have all the tools at your disposal to do it. So, it's like, yeah,
like I said, I will neither admit to composing or say that I don't. But
yeah,
I will admit to never sharing anything that I may or may not have written.
yeah, yeah, indeed. Yeah, yeah, it's true. So, has there been anything that you've had, and we won't mention names, but this is always a fun thing to talk about because I think it's entertaining. But is there anything a composer has done for you as a pianist that absolutely was like, oh, like, and what was it?
Um, I don't I don't think so. I sometimes I think there was a particular piece that is has a hard technique to execute well, or to that asks for a fast transition between extended techniques and then playing on the piano.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't really think of it as like I don't have it's exciting to have that challenge. I think for me, it's my inherent exuberance. I think that when I get to
Yeah,
play the piano and and like when you're teaching a lot and when you're doing that sort of work, it can sometimes cut. It always cuts into practicing time, I would say.
Mm.
And so, like when I get to have a project like that, it's really exciting to figure out how to make this work to have this vision come alive. So I'm not sure I've ever had like, oh, I can't believe I have to do this. If I'm like working on something and the song or the piece doesn't quite mesh well with my own artistic sensibilities, sometimes I'm like, this isn't my favorite piece of music in the world. But that really hasn't happened. Um, and like with anything that you have to, I mean, sometimes you have to accompany like showpieces for violin or something, and those aren't or recitative in arias. I love working with singers, and I've always disliked playing recitatives and arias. They've always felt underwhelming to me. But then you kind of just like do your best, and you try to find something that expresses what's in the music, and so yeah, so that's yeah. I would say that nothing where I've been like, oh, I can't believe I have to do this. It's been more like, let's what can we do to make this either easier to do technically or more effective in performance. Um,
Okay. I like that answer as well. Yeah, I think very good. So my next question. So this is getting me to explore. I I I feel like you bring up some really good points. So do you feel like as a pianist, you want to do stuff that is really interesting for you and new and fun? Do you,
um, yeah, what do you mean? What can you
yeah, do you feel
idea?
like it's do you feel like as a pianist you want to you like doing things that are um that are fun for you. You like to be challenged. You like to be engaged in something that you haven't done before.
Yeah, I think part of I think finding those pieces that are new to me and that I hadn't heard before, or I didn't know the composer, or it's like a new collaboration, or a world premiere, or just a new piece of music by a living composer generally. That's always really quite fun. It's nice to feel that I'm expanding my musical knowledge, my musical understanding of the world, and especially with composers who are alive, or composers writing in the last, say, 40 years or so.
Mhm,
There's something that speaks directly to my
mhm,
experience as a human in society,
mhm,
and in the world. These composers are grappling with things that, well, maybe am too young to have experienced directly, are things that I grew up knowing about and
mhm,
experiencing, and have impacted my life and the lives of people I know and love and care about. Um, and so that's really exciting to find those things. I think, but that's also true in the canon. When you're studying Mozart or you're studying Bach, or there's so much music to learn and to discover. And I love Bach. I do not know of all of Bach's works. And so it's a joy and an opportunity to really kind of investigate what is going on and what is there to be discovered. There's so much there. I mean, for everyone, for this entire literature that we've established, there's so much there, and not just in the regular pianistic repertoire, but I mean, going into Renaissance composers, um, going through composers who are now getting a little bit more of attention on concert stages because of um, being underrepresented in the past for obvious historical and often racist and sexist reasons. Um, these are it's exciting to be alive and a practicing artist in a time where there's so much musical activity and so much that's being included and so much that feels and speaks directly to my feelings and thoughts and sentiments.
mhm.
It's something very important and profound.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's amazing how music can transport us to different places and can really resonate with us as a person. And I know that what resonates with me is different from someone else, and that's okay. Um, yeah, and but I think keeping an open mind about musical taste and musical genres and just what you do is always something that's enriching as a professional musician.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to that curiosity that we were talking about with working with composers. I think if musicians and audiences stay curious about what sounds are out there, it makes it a lot easier to experience art and experience the world and experience music specifically, since we were both musicians, in a way that is going to be much more open, much more interested in investigating what's going on and why a musician or artist did a particular thing or made a particular choice, which is um, always an interesting thing to kind of ask with students too. It's like, well, why do you think what's really going on here? Why is this sforzando here when it makes it sound so odd? Or why is it so suddenly soft after this long crescendo? I mean, those are things I'm about to go teach lessons after this. So like those are things that I've been thinking about with students I'm seeing later today. So it's
Yeah,
kind of
awesome.
directly on my mind. But
Yeah,
that curiosity in listening, I think, is a really valuable thing. And I think it's one of the responsibilities I feel as a performer who performs new music more regularly now, I think, than I did even when I was a student, which is like this. If I can help inculcate a sense of curiosity in my listeners and audiences, I think that's a really important thing as an ethos going into the world. Um,
yes,
so yeah.
yes. Very good. I have one more question. Um, and it's kind of two-sided. So what are your experiences? What is your advice about um how composers can reach you and have good interpersonal skills with you? And what are some of your favorite experiences working with composers in that line of thinking?
I would say that in terms of like reaching me in rehearsals, I think as there's just like a willingness to working hard, of course, but I like to make sure that when we're working hard and when I'm working hard, that it's just like kind of a good vibe, that like you're in a place you want to be, you're joining together to create art and to do this new thing, and it's intense and it's hard work, and I want to be perfect, and the composer wants me to be as perfect as I can be so that I can give an accurate reading of their score. um and but in yeah just I really like when musicians get together and are working really with a lot of dedication and with a lot of intensity, having that ability to kind of be human and be in it together and feel like it's hard work, but it's a good thing to do and it's a fun thing to do and it's a special thing to be a part of, and that's a very important thing for me. Again, it's not unique to working with composers, right? This is whenever I work collaboratively, it's something that I care about. I want people to take the work seriously and also to be human and with me in this process, right? And that includes laughing and that includes being silly at times and trying fun things and walking around and conducting and getting into fights occasionally and all those
Yeah, yeah.
sorts of things. And I'm afraid in my answer I've forgotten the second part of that question that you
Um,
asked.
so what are some of your favorite experiences working composer and with composers in that vein?
So my experience with the Links project, I think, was pretty extraordinary. The Links project is an autism advocacy project, and working with people with autism. Uh, and when I was there, it was primarily nonverbal people with autism, and so who used a particular method whose name I'm forgetting, to kind of communicate and write. And so these young people wrote texts, and the Links Project commissioned composers to set those texts to art song, and that was a really extraordinary experience, and getting to meet a lot of Chicago-based composers, and kind of bring this music and this expression to life was very special. Well, one of my best friends, Chris Castro, he wrote a piano sonata for me that I performed in January of 2021.
Mhm.
Um, and that was really great. That was kind of the start of my somewhat what I had hoped to be a more regular concert series and has turned into an irregular concert series. But it was really great because for people who wanted to have more of an experience, they had the opportunity to listen to Chris talk about his composition, and it was great to work with him, especially in those early months of the pandemic, right? Where or the first year of the pandemic, I guess, where things were really shut down and things were really hard. It was great to be in that artistic space with Chris at that time. So yeah.
Very good. Wow.
Well, and also, there's one other concert that I did in for the Ear Taxi Festival with the composer Andrew McManus, which was a celebration of queer composers, of queer living composers, and I got to work with friends of mine and composers I really care about, bringing queer music to life, which is also very important to me.
Um, very good. That's excellent. Like I feel like, your answers, for me, they really helped present clarities to some things that I've been thinking about, and just in the big sense of things, I think about the the big picture, and a lot of times, um, classical music is is kind of divided down the middle almost, right? And you show everything that's good about, you know, the nonprofit sphere, and just going out there and exploring new things, and how gratifying and you know how successful that can feel, which I appreciate. So anyway,
Oh,
um,
yeah, I really appreciate that. I think the really exciting thing about classical music is every classical musician is going to need to do something different than what we've done in the past. And that's
yeah,
true because the market is changing. It's true because climate change is changing how we travel and experience the world and experience art. And
yeah,
I think that like that curiosity is what will save this art form, which I think is really important and speaks to something really human. It's not the only art form that speaks to something really that's really important and speaks to our humanity, but it's one that I know is important to me, and I'm not unique. I'm a person just like anyone else, and so there's a lot of really good music out there, and it's important to share and advocate for.
yeah. Yep, it is. I think so. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Daniel. I won't leave you. I won't the whatever too long. Sorry, I'm at a loss for words, but thank you so much, Daniel, and I appreciate your thoughts, and I'll send you an email. I'd love to have you play something of mine if you'd be interested.
Absolutely, send it along.
Yeah.
Um, I actually have two performances coming up. One at the
Mhm.
College Music Society conference. I'm playing a piece by Andrew Conklin. I
Okay.
think I'm saying his name right. We've only corresponded by email. And on November 2nd at ISU, I'm playing a couple of pieces by Andrea Casarobios. Again, I think I'm saying her name right. She's a really wonderful cellist and composer. So
So
yeah,
very good.
I'm always happy to play new music. It's an exciting thing to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel. Have a
Thank you.
great day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye bye.